Good afternoon, Judge Shapiro. We have representatives for both sides as well as their court reporter who I can bring in whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready. Thank you.
Can anyone hear the court reporter now, please?
Yeah.
I can now.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone.
Okay.
Good morning. I
afternoon.
need to find out who everybody is and who represents what, please.
Okay, so I am Joe Vernon for MEDC, and this is our motion.
MEDC.
Sorry, the defendant, Michigan Economic Development Corporation.
I'm sorry, who is for what development corporation?
Joe Vernon, Joseph Vernon, for
Can you represent MEDC?
yes.
All right, Mr. Wilcox, who are you here for,
Yes.
please?
Hi, I'm Derek Wilcox. I'm here on behalf of the plaintiff, Mackinac Center for Public Policy.
Okay, it's going to take me a minute to write that down.
Okay. And that's Mackinac ending in a C. I know there's a couple ways to spell it in Michigan.
Okay.
I've only seen it spelled one way, but you know,
There's another ending in W. There's a city or there's another place in Michigan.
I've seen it with the W, sorry. And my judge is Judge Shapiro.
That's right. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I guess I'm ready to go then. I'm sorry. I don't know. Is this a motion for what?
Summary disposition, I believe,
That's
right?
kind of what I thought.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. All right. May I call the case then, Ms. Hanger?
Yes, hold on just a quick second. I'm sorry. I got to make sure my adjunct
No problem.
reporter is working. Okay, yes, you can. Sorry.
All right. I'm going to call the case. It's Court of Claims number 22-109MZ, Mackinac Center for Public Policy versus Michigan Economic Development Corporation. We're here today on defendant's motion for summary disposition. So, Mr. Vernon, it's your motion. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court. We're entitled to summary disposition because the records Mackinac is requesting, these input assumption worksheets, they don't exist. MEDC has never created, possessed, used anything with that name or anything like it. The MEDC has met its burden. We've said that these records don't exist. We've never possessed or used them, and we've provided the affidavit evidence in support. And respectfully, Mackinac has not presented anything that presents a fact issue on these points. I know the court has read the brief, a very brief overview. If Your Honor would submit, or if you have any questions.
Well, I have a quick question before you move on, which is, the plaintiff argues that the affidavit from Mr. Bacall is inadequate because it says that if the documents exist, they are not owned, in possession of, or retained by MEDC. And it also says you've never prepared or used them, but it doesn't say we've never been in possession of them. You're telling me today that MEDC has never been in possession. Do I understand you correctly? You represent that as an officer of the court?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. And so and I'm going to certainly hear from the plaintiff about this, but the documents attached as Exhibit A to the letter requesting these documents, do you know what those documents are? I mean, I've looked at them. It's an REMI assumption worksheet and then something else involving advanced composites. Do these documents relate to this case, or these are exemplars? Okay.
No.
Exemplars, yes. This kind of document is what we were saying.
I understand. Mr. Vernon, then, what is, can you explain to me what it is that this outside contractor, whichever name we're talking about, what is it that they do and what is it your offices supplied them with?
Well, and I can do that, and I can do it in comparison to the REMI reports that Mr. Wilcox attached to his request. And what happened previously is this prior agency required the MEDC to prepare these certain inputs that they would then, and we call them regional economic models worksheets. We prepared them for the prior agency, which would then use them to perform some sort of analysis. And in this instance, what tourism economics did was not the same work, and they did not require, ask for, or receive the same sort of inputs from the MEDC. Whether tourism economics, excuse me, the name of the entity, interviewed employees, or the extent to which they gathered their information independently, either way, they didn't use anything that we presented to them in any documentary form, and anything that we'd given to them would have been included in the 63-page production that we made in response to the FOIA request. So there was nothing similar to these REMI worksheets involved in this particular instance and report that Tourism Economics created.
Is the 63-page production for this FOIA request or a prior one?
For this FOIA request, there was a 63-page production.
I don't think I've seen it, have I? I don't know that I need to, but I don't recall seeing it.
I mean, it was for the previous one, I believe.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry, it was for the previous request, but specifically related to tourism economics. It was not for the REMI exemplar that we were discussing before, but this case sort of involved multiple requests for the same tourism economics input assumption worksheets, and that's to what I'm referring.
All right, so you want to turn to the issue of whether or not the tourism economic, whether or not the state MEDC has a duty to either sign releases or direct this third party to produce material.
Sure, and we referenced that in the Hoffman case. The fact that the MEDC received a report from tourism economics does not mean that it used, what's referred to here as an input assumption worksheet. Whatever underlying analysis tourism economics relied on before it made its report it doesn't equate to MEDC actually using every bit of information on which tourism economics may have relied. And that's really what the Hoffman case is about. In that case, an independent lawyer conducted an investigation. He had an investigation file. Even though it was used to create the report that he gave to the city, he didn't report the specifics from his file. He reported his conclusion in the report. And that's why we cite that case, because it's analogous to this instance in which tourism economics didn't report whatever the underlying basis for its analysis was. It gave us a final report and a conclusion, which we reported and which is a public record and available online. But the fact that there was a report that involved some form of analysis doesn't mean that the analysis becomes a public record. And I believe Mackinac also makes this agency argument in its brief. One, it hasn't pled or proven that tourism economics is an agent of Michigan Economic Development Corporation, but also the FOIA statute doesn't extend to information that might be held by agents. The statute could have included language that accomplished that, but it didn't. And as the Brainer Court noted, and we cite that in our brief, it would defy logic to conclude that the legislature intended FOIA to apply to all agents. So I think those are the two arguments I'd make in response to that contention, Your Honor.
In McKenzie, though, was it an agent or for a contractor. It appears to me, I mean, I know there were some distinctions. You're talking about another government agency in McKenzie, but certainly McKenzie is the case that seems is the best for the plaintiff. Would you like to respond to it, or do you want to save for your rebuttal?
Well, I would say in McKenzie, it was a contractor. The township delegated what the court stressed was a clerical task to a third party. The third party ended up storing copies of information that the township created and used. Our case does not involve a mere clerical task. It involves more of an independent third party analysis, which is why we say Hoffman's more appropriate. And the McKenzie court concluded that the township had access to the information that was recorded on the tapes. It was actually the township's information. It controlled that information, and the third party simply converted it and stored it as part of this clerical task. None of which is true for this factual scenario. What Mackinac would like to get is the underlying analysis of this independent entity, and we submit that that's different than what's discussed in McKenzie.
So where did this independent entity get their data?
I don't have, Your Honor, a full list of everything that it considered when it came up with its report. I think we sort of hire entities like that to come up with their conclusions. I don't know if the information was derived publicly, but I can tell you that the 63 pages that we produced and were responsive to the request contained any documentation that would have been provided to them.
Okay. And what is an assumption worksheet? And Mr. Wilcox will tell me as well, but I want to understand.
So that one I can't answer for you, other than I believe it's terminology that Mackinac is using to describe something that's similar to the REMI. And I'm sorry that I keep referring to it as REMI, but I don't recall what the regional economic modeling something. But that's not something that's not terminology that the MEDC is familiar with. It's not something that they know. And in trying to figure out what Mackinac may have meant by it, so they looked for what could potentially be similar documents or something containing inputs that would be provided to tourism economics. They just didn't have anything like that.
Okay, so you're telling me that no assumption worksheet, whether it looked like this one or not, was supplied to tourism economics for the, what is it, the 2019 or whatever report we're looking for?
Correct. Yes. Yes.
All right. All right. Unless you've got something else right now, I'll turn it over to Mr. Wilcox. Is that okay?
That's fine. Thank you, Your Honor.
You bet. Mr.
Thank you, Your
Wilcox.
Honor. Well, I think that is you asked him the key question, which is where did that data come from, if not from the MEDC? I'm sorry, I had a funny noise there. Did anyone else break up, or everyone hearing me? All right, thank you. We provided, as we've noted, the assumption worksheet as an exemplar on there. It provides all matters of categories of type. This is a similar type program from the MEGA Corporation, which is, I forget what that acronym sounds like, but it's another economic development effort by the state. And they provide various expenditures on categories of spending for evaluation for the return on investment. And so maybe they don't use that terminology assumption worksheet in this instance with SMAR Insights, is I believe the name of the contractor, but it kind of defies belief that they wouldn't have provided them with anything. I believe he said orally about something about conversations with them. And that would have, of course, been the first that I heard of that. He provided now a fairly thorough statement that they didn't provide them with anything, but we didn't get that, as I noted in the brief, we didn't get that from their affidavits. We got hair splitting and to the effect of, we didn't provide that to tourism economics. Okay, well, we asked, did you provide it to anyone else in the request? And we didn't get a clear answer on that. They used the past tense that we don't, or present tense that we don't have those now. Well, did you in the past? So none of their denials ever before were categorical that we never provided them with any data. And for that reason, we think that the matter should proceed now. Summary disposition should be denied, and we should be able to go to discovery and ask them, okay, clearly you must have, well, I'm assuming, but you must have had a contract with Smart Insights saying you will provide us with this output and we will help you by providing this sort of input. Or maybe it'll say, we're not going to provide you with anything. You're on your own to determine how effective our programs are. That sort of defies belief, in my opinion.
So let me stop you. I mean,
Sure.
in this case, no, you haven't done any discovery to date?
No, Your Honor, we had not done discovery. I had been before you recently, and I had thought you had said in a summary disposition, in a situation like this where they didn't even file an answer, they filed a motion for summary disposition, that you said you would take the summary disposition motion first and then issue a scheduling order. So I didn't want to press the matter knowing that all this was pending and waste everyone's time. So
That's okay, and I'm still getting the hang of this, so.
okay.
And
I just want to make
So it's your position, you accept the representation here today, it sounds like, but you want to see, you've indicated the contract, that was not provided in the 63 pages?
No, I don't believe so. I don't want to say categorically. It's been a while since I reviewed the 63 pages because that was in response to a different request.
Okay, that was the one that was dismissed?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I want to know.
What else do you want discovery if you're going to conduct discovery?
Well, as he said he doesn't know where they got the data from, and the data, it relates to a program by the MEDC. They both clearly state, and I put that in the brief, that they are partnering with Smart Insights. So they keep wanting to create this as a de minimis contact so that they can fit this in with a Hoffman versus Bay City. But I submit to you that this is more than a simple contact. They claim to be partnering. They were funding them, they promoted, and they were talking about MEDC programs. There must be some information that was passed from MEDC to Smart Insights to get them to be able to say, well, your program has this return on investment. And I'm afraid we're getting hung up on language on whether or not it's a input sheet or what all it's called, but there must be some data. And he just said that he doesn't know where they got that data from. And I think we should be able to press them in discovery and just find out, okay, where did the data come from? How do you accept this? Did you do any peer review of this before you touted the study? You published the study. You said this is the return on investment we're getting for how much bang we're getting for our buck. How do you know? And what was the arrangement?
Well, I don't know that anything matters post the report, but I hear your point about how did they get the data.
Yes.
But continue, go ahead. Mr. Vernon, we'll come back to you.
I wanted to address another point. He cited a couple cases of Jones versus FBI and Walloon they say that you only have a duty to provide documents that you are holding at the time of the FOIA request. And I wanted to address that on the record because that's not at all true. What Walloon said, which is a Michigan case, said that you have a duty to preserve documents. And the FBI case said the same thing, except in the FBI case, they were seeking documents 20 years after the fact. Now in Michigan, we are required to retain documents both for state agencies and for local governments, and they are apparently an interlocal agency agreement of the two. It's not entirely.
I want to hear this point, but before you go further, I have a question about Walloon. The way I read it, and maybe I missed something, I don't recall seeing, and again, you may be right, broad statements about preservation. It seemed to me that it was clear that once the FOIA request was received, then they shipped the documents to a third party, and not before, which obviously is more suspect. So is it your position that every document that is ever produced must be preserved indefinitely? No,
Your Honor, I was about to describe that. What it is in Michigan, we have a statute, including, I'll cite it, 750.491 public records. Removal or mutilation and destruction, there is a misdemeanor penalty for a government agency that destroys them. You, of course, do not have to keep them forever. And that determination is given to the Department of Technology Management and Budget, and they produce a number of schedules. I know this isn't part of the record now. I'm sorry?
A retention schedule?
Yes.
Or destruction, whatever, okay.
Yes, a document retention schedule. And generally, the one I have in my hand here is a General Retention Schedule 24, again, produced by MTDMB. And this is a general provision. They say subject files. Special reports, topical correspondence, including electronic mail, research materials, project planning notes, organizational charts, etc., are to be preserved for 5 years from the date of the action. I know you can't see this, Your Honor. I was holding it up, but that's what it says from the DTMB. Now, exactly which schedule applies to them, as they are a hybrid combination of state agencies and local agencies, I'm not sure. The DTMB publishes all these schedules online, but for state agencies, you can only access them if you are a state employee. Other than that, you perhaps have to send a FOIA response, a FOIA request to the DTMB to find out other state agencies. But in general, we requested something in 2022, which maybe took place in 2020, and that there's almost nothing on the schedule that you can destroy within 2 years. And I think this general catch-all one, 5 years, probably applies. And as with our statute of limitations for contracts, all the contracts are 6 years. So that, which one we apply here, I think it's pretty clear that if they destroyed them within 2 years, they were probably out of bounds according to the document retention schedules that are published by the state.
So I believe there's case law that says, once there's an affidavit that the documents didn't exist, or we didn't review them, et cetera, that's the end of it. Is there case law that says you're entitled to discovery on that?
Well, I don't think they submitted an affidavit that said they had absolutely nothing. And as I said, they split hairs constantly. We don't have it now. Tourism economics doesn't have it, and so on and so forth, that it wasn't clear. Now, if they're saying
they sent me a new affidavit, they say they filed a new affidavit tomorrow.
Your Honor, I would have to, yeah, if he said absolutely clearly that MEDC provided absolutely no help or data to SMAR Insights in the production of this report, I don't know what I would be able to say to that, except that we would probably submit a FOIA contract the very next day, or excuse me, a FOIA request for the contract between MEDC and DTMB, and we'll probably be back here again.
Okay. And are you looking for, in discovery, are you looking for depositions or just documents? Or
I would always want to, for depositions cost so much money, take so much time. I would always start with documents and try and narrow it down. That's how I always do it. Requests, okay. And then, build on that before we bring someone in, and then everybody spends an afternoon, taking depositions. That's how I would do it.
Well, I asked you several questions, so if you have more to say on anything, just go ahead and continue. I didn't need to cut you off.
Yep. Well, I think I covered everything else in the brief, and I think I've addressed the topics that he raised. So I will reserve any time I have, I guess, and leave it to the court for any questions.
Well, there is one more thing, which is the what makes you think that whether it was SMAR something or tourism econ, whoever it was, this third party, what makes you think they're an agent as opposed to a contractor?
Well, again, without seeing if there was a contract or how their arrangement to do business, I can't say for sure. But I think they were working on behalf. They generally fit the definition of an agent, as they were working on their behalf under their control to some extent. Again, discovery would be needed to find out to what extent they exerted control, I believe. I mean, okay. We don't even know the existence of some of these until, we delved into it. I forget originally where we became aware of the name Tourism Economics, and I believe there's another one, Oxford Economics, which might be a parent company of Tourism Economics. And of course, we have SMAR Insight because they were the ones who eventually published the study. So we don't know the arrangement between all of these, but they were doing MEDC work for something that MEDC said they were partnering with. That's a quote, that they were partnering with them on this. And so therefore it makes sense that if they're evaluating an MEDC program, that MEDC would be cooperating with them. It defies belief to believe that they told SMAR Insight to go figure this all out on their own.
Okay. So Mr. Vernon, go ahead, and I have a couple of questions, but you go ahead.
Sure. And I think we're getting far afield, and the reason that I'm making that statement because it's relevant. This case is not about the sufficiency of our 63-page production, which, if there were requests for contracts, they would have been produced in the prior production. This case is not about whether we preserved information under the statute that Mr. Wilcox cited, this case is about one thing: input assumption worksheets. And Your Honor, you're correct. There's case law that says that once an affidavit is provided, the burden shifts. And we have the affidavit of Ms. Weber, of Mr. Bacall, which we've attached as Exhibit 8 to our motion, which makes clear, one, we didn't direct or control any aspects of their performance, and we didn't prepare anything like the REMI worksheet exemplars that were attached to their request. We did not prepare anything similar for tourism economics. And that's something that is repeated in the affidavit that we attached to our reply. This request and this case is about one thing: the input assumption worksheets. We didn't prepare them. We didn't provide anything like them. We didn't take a narrow approach in searching for them. That's not something that's ever existed, that we've ever heard of, or that we ever prepared. Now, the report itself, which is publicly available, and Mr. Wilcox, I know, has reviewed, that will reference what tourism economics based its analysis on. And I'm certain that Mr. Wilcox requested everything that he wanted that would have been referenced in the report, and that would have been the subject of the prior request and the information that was produced. If for some reason he didn't ask for a contract or some other piece of information that's cited in that report, then that can be the subject of a new FOIA request. But this case is about input assumption worksheets. Exhaustive search was made for anything that could even closely resemble that, and nothing like that ever existed, was created, was ever provided to tourism economics. So to the extent that Mr. Wilcox is now looking for something else, and I would submit that I think it would have been covered in the prior request and the documents that were produced in the case that was dismissed. But if there's something new, then that can be the subject of a new FOIA request. But as it pertains to what was actually requested here, we've got two affidavits that confirm that that's not something that we've ever prepared, used, created, or provided to tourism economics.
Well, let me ask you. You have an affidavit and you represent, but if that contract says you're to supply us with X, Y, and Z, I don't know what it says. Maybe it doesn't say anything like that. But if it does, and there's another request and that shows up, and then I've already dismissed this case, where are we at? I mean, if it's in there, you have to provide input assumption worksheets. Everybody's got a problem.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. If the contract says you have to provide input assumption worksheets, and it turns out that it did, then we do have a problem. But I trust my client when they put these affidavits together. If he's looking for something else, and again, Mr. Wilcox and I have litigated a few cases, and I know how thorough he is. I'm pretty certain that they would have been included in the prior request, and there were no, none of the information that was requested there is the subject of this suit, other than the input assumption worksheet. So if there's something else that he's looking for, he can submit a FOIA request for it. But for this particular information, we've made clear with the two affidavits that they don't exist, and they weren't provided to tourism economics, and nothing like them. It wasn't a narrow search, a direct word search.
I understand. And hang on, the question just jumped out of my, these 63 pages, are they somewhere in the previous case file? Were they ever filed with the court?
I don't believe that Mr. Wilcox included them with his complaint.
I don't recall, Your Honor.
Okay, I just thought if they were there, I'd have a look. But all right, anything else either of you would like to argue or point out?
Well, Your Honor, I just want to, obviously we push the agency angle and we preserve that issue, but I just want to point out that if what they're saying is true, that government agencies can now farm out work to third parties and say, but we're not looking, okay, you do this on your own, and then they produce something that the government uses, the public can't obtain this under FOIA. And that just kind of guts the FOIA law the more and more they use these outside contractors or agents, however that may be. So I just don't think that that is the correct interpretation of the law. FOIA is very broad.
Well, in the event I rule against you, I don't know how I'm ruling it, but in the event I do, I guess you have to go to the legislature, and I think your office is pretty good at that. experience. But it's an interesting question. Was there something else, Mr. Wilcox? I cut you off.
No, that's it, Your
Okay.
Honor. Thank you.
All right. Well, I'm going to have another look at this, and we'll get you out an opinion as soon as I can. Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. And good to meet you, Mr. Wilcox.
Yeah, nice to see.
All right. Gentlemen, take care. This hearing is concluded, and you can tell the court reporter if you want to order. All right. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Vernon.
Take care.